Hi everybody, my name is Richard Seidlitz, aka TLM01, and I'm the owner of redpants.lol. Today I'm changing out the gear oil in my 2007 V8 Vantage. I'm doing this on a 6-speed manual, which is important because I don't necessarily recommend using any other oil than the specified BOT270A oil from the dealership if you have a flappy paddle transmission. The reason is because those transmissions are so finely calibrated for that oil that if you change anything out, it may cause issues. I'm not sure if it has or hasn't ever done that to a car, but it's one of those things where I'd rather be safe than sorry, and it's an extremely expensive gearbox, so you don't want to mess it up. With the manual transmissions, you have a lot more flexibility. I've run a few different kinds of oil in mine, everything from the dealership spec to, it was Royal Purple. Recently I was using Castrol's Limited Slip, which was not a good choice because it's way too thick when it's cold, and so you have a lot of cold shifting issues. And now I'm using Motil's Gear 300 75 weight 90. The reason I reached out to them is for a couple of things. One, they have an engine oil, which I use in my oil change videos. I also sell on my website, just like I sell this. And the other thing is because with this gear oil, it's actually the most non-viscous oil, which means it flows the freest when it's cold, at cold temperatures. And that's really important for us because of those cold shifting issues. So what I've actually done is I've started using this, and I'll be doing some more videos to follow up with that. I'm doing a big track day at Lime Rock this weekend where I'll be actually putting this stuff through some torture. And it's going to take me 7 hours to get there, a lot of track time during that trip, and then 7 hours to get back. So it's getting put through its paces. Before I begin, I actually wanted to show something that's really cool. I didn't even realize this until I figured it out by accident, but one of the hardest things about doing this job is that you have to use a pump. You have to use a pump in order to get the fluid into the transmission because the fill plug is up inside the car. You can't get a bottle up there if it's a normal bottle until I found this out. And this is actually something I found out completely on accident. Something that threw me off when I started using Motil products is they have a lot of weird bottles. I've never seen such convoluted bottles, but when I did this, I realized why. And so the first thing I did was, you take it off like normal. You take off that little twist cap, you twist this off, and that's fine. But before I do that, I'm going to show you something very weird. The inside of this is flexible. It's actually kind of thin, and you can pull it out and create a nozzle, which is bendy. And that's actually pretty awesome because once you've done that, you can actually put this up inside the car, and this will flex enough to allow you to maneuver it so you can squeeze this bottle in there. I've never seen that before. I'm pretty freaking impressed by it, so I'm excited. I thought I'd share that with you, especially since when you buy this stuff, it's going to be a little confusing as to why it's got such a convoluted opening to it, but that's why. You can actually turn this into a spout instead of having to use a pump, which, trust me, my arms are killing me because I didn't realize this until the third bottle in. So let's get started. It's a pretty easy process. I'm just going to show you the basics like I usually do. So first thing is to get the car up on jack stands. I like to point out when you do this that the only thing keeping this car from rolling is concentrated in the rear wheels. So if you leave it in gear, it's not going to be able to roll because the engine itself is locking it in place. Or you've got the, and if you want to use both, you've got the Ebrake. So this secondary caliper right here, that's the caliper for the handbrake. If you go to the front and you lift up the rear and you have nothing keeping, you don't use wheel chocks, which even then I wouldn't recommend doing the rear only. The problem is that there's nothing keeping this wheel from spinning. It will roll. So if you lift up the back of the car, the front will roll, the back will slam down, and then nobody is happy anymore. So when you do this, just make sure, caution, safety, all that, do it first because you don't want this to turn into a big incident. So down here, you can see that I've taken this under tray off. There's a whole bunch of these Torx bolts that are all over the place. Don't be surprised if those are stripped. These are exposed to a lot of elements and a lot of hard stuff. You've got all the water, the dirt, the grime. It's really, really easy for these to seize up, so just be ready for that. Actually, my buddy Fraggle is over here. He was helping me get rid of a couple of them because they were so seized that we had to use a mallet and chisel to literally, what's a nice way to put this, beat them out of their holes. So there's that. The gear oil itself is easy to change once you've gotten that done. The first thing you're going to see here is this drain plug. That is a, what was it, a 14 millimeter hex. Then you've got two 8 millimeter bolts on this. This is the filter itself. All you have to do is remove those two bolts, and then you can pop this out. If it does give you trouble, you can use a very, very small flathead screwdriver to pop the seal because there's an O-ring in here. and it's kind of a pain to get that out sometimes, depending on how many times, or how much this is heat cycled and sealed itself. Just be extremely careful because you don't want this to break. While I'm down here touching everything, another thing to keep in mind is that don't do this with hot exhaust, because you are working in very tight confines with this. The muffler's right above you. You're going to burn yourself if you don't let this exhaust cool off. The last part is the fill plug. And the fill plug is up there between the transmission and the exhaust pipe. So you can do it two ways. You can use a box end wrench to go straight up this way, or you can go up on this side using a extension with a 22 millimeter socket. Either way, it's 22 millimeter fill plug right there. That's just a standard 22 millimeter socket. The first thing you want to do when you're getting ready to drain this is you actually want to do the fill plug first, and that's for two very specific reasons. The first is that it's going to make it a lot easier for this oil to drain once you remove this. It allows the air to flow in while the oil is flowing out. If you don't do that, you're going to get that glugging. It's going to be a bit messier, and this is already a really messy job. The second reason, which is far more important, is because if anything else goes wrong, if you take out the drain plug first, you can no longer, and say something happens to this, you can no longer fill this up. You're pretty much screwed. So taking that out first and making sure it's fine is the most important thing, because at least if that goes wrong, you can fill it back up and deal with it from there. It's just one of those things where it's just a little bit more safety involved. So once you've done that, the first thing, again, 22 millimeter socket or box end wrench to get rid of that fill plug. Next, you're going to do the 14 millimeter hex one, which I think I've got one sitting somewhere, which is probably gone now, but you can see what it looks like right here. You're going to release that. It's going to drain a whole lot of oil, as you can see. Once that's done, you can clean that up. You can put that back in place. With the filter over here, again, it's those two 8 millimeter bolts. Pop it out, clean the filter. Mine was actually really clean. There wasn't really anything to see, so I'm not really videotaping it. Make sure it's clean, put it back in place, put the bolts back in. Make sure that these are both tightened back in place, and then you can fill the oil. So, like I said, with this one's empty. Haha. That one I had to cut open because that crappy pump did not go well. See, this is what I'm talking about. If you use the pull out method, that's going to sound horrible in hindsight, but you know what, I'm going to do that. If you pull out the top of this, you can reach it up through here and maneuver it into place to poke it into that fill hole. So it's a little weird. You have to be careful because this may actually, you might start to leak a little bit if you're not careful, and you may anyway. It's very easy to leak out of here. But that's all that you have to do, is you have to maneuver that in place, and you can squeeze it, and it goes by so much quicker, and it's going to save your arms a lot of pumping. So once you've completed that, it takes 4.5 liters. You may fill up before or after that. The easiest way to do this is just fill it up until oil starts coming out of that drain plug. That's all you have to do. Is once it starts coming out of the drain plug, it means it's full, so then you can just wipe it down, plug it back up, and you're set. So that's the entire process. It's actually not that hard to do. You may run across a couple of complications. The main ones being that those bolts holding that under the diffuser in place may strip. The bolts for the on the transmission may be a bit tough to get loose. It may be a little difficult to get the gear oil bottles in place or the pump in place if you're using a pump, but it's not too difficult because there's really not a lot involved. There's just a couple things that could go less easy than you want, which is what's going on now. Anyway, so again, I sell Motol's the 70W, all the way at the end.
Oh, you were so close.
Cut.